Welcome. I'm Oda Nadel, Chairman of the Board of Finance. This is the Town of Clinton public meeting on the proposed 2015-2016 budget. We're discussing the Town of Clinton budget tonight in the amount of $16,582,487,000. Can everyone hear me clearly? Yep. And a Board of Education budget of $32,710,331. That figure includes their debt service. This represents a mill rate change from 26.27 to 26.77. It's a 0.5 increase. After the vote on 5/13, the town budget was reduced by $169,750. That budget required $144,400 in cuts in planned spending, capital items, and also $25,350 in operating cuts, which were cut between a figure of $500 and $5,000 across multiple departments. The Board of Education budget was reduced by $330,000. The Board of Education did not need to make any program cuts to arrive at this budget number. The $330,000 came from salary and fringe benefit savings from several teachers who chose not to return next year, and the decision not to employ another teacher due to stagnant or declining enrollment figures. Please note that the specific spending with regards to the Board of Education is only and totally in the control of the Board of Education, not the Board of Finance. We welcome all Clinton taxpayers here to participate. We hope you will speak regarding these proposed budgets. The town vote, the referendum, will be in approximately 1 week on May 27th, Wednesday. Guidelines for speakers. Come forward, provide your name and address, and speak so all can hear you. You're welcome to use the microphone, but it's kind of an empty house, voice might carry. Please remember this meeting is about financials, the economics of Clinton. The more thoughtful we are with our comments, the better we all are. And respect and decency is being patient and quiet while others speak. Just like in second grade. Thank you so much. And anyone is welcome to come up and speak their mind on these items.
Is this being divided into town and education, or is it everything together? Or?
We can speak of the town first, because that was the first thing I addressed, and that was the $60,582,487 budget with the proposed $169,750 in cuts. Do you care to speak, Kurt?
I do, but I don't necessarily need to be first.
Looks like you're going to be first. You'll probably be. Is anyone prepared to speak tonight? No? Just listen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Board of Finance. Some of what I'm going to say I've repeated a number of times. It's not news, but I think it does bear repeating. Since 2000 to 2013, the number of households in Clinton increased 3%. The median household income increased 17%. The tax levy increased 72%. And because the grand list went from 65% residential to 75% residential, the amount of the tax levy attributable to the residential taxpayers went up 97%. So taxes in Clinton for residential taxpayers increased 5.7 times what their incomes, median household income, increased. I think it's important to note that the people who are most hurt by this, and I know Ms. Santos on occasion has commented that people get into Mercedes and go to these CTA meetings, but they're the least hurt. The top 1% pay about 1.2% of their incomes in property taxes. The lowest 20% pay 5.3% of their total income in property taxes. Property taxes hurt the most vulnerable people in our community. I serve as a volunteer to prepare taxes in the Henry Carter Hall Library. I have for 2 years. And most of the people who are our clients are the lower half of people in Clinton who we volunteer to prepare their taxes. This year, I prepared the taxes for a couple who came in and were due an $81 tax refund. But because of the affordable health care that they had gotten through the state, they owed the state $76 because they were over-subsidized. And as a result of that, they got a $5 refund. The lady who I was working with buried her head in her hands. $76 meant the world to her. I know for some people in the town, $7.50 a month doesn't mean very much. But the most vulnerable people in my town are really hurting, and I can tell you that from my personal experience with them. I can afford these taxes. I'm not here for me. I'm here for them. Had we not defeated the budgets over the last, and this 6 years now, this will be the 6th year, our mill rate will be 27.94 or more, because I'm not even taking into consideration any compounding. And this would be putting undue burden on the most vulnerable people of our community. I came to the Board of Finance and gave you, I thought, a very detailed path to having no increase in the mill rate this year. It included reducing the operating budget for the Board of Education, $620,000. When we get to the Board of Education, we'll talk about that in greater detail, and their capital budget. But it did require a small decrease in the town operating budget of $100,000. The recognition of enhanced revenues, when there are two ways that you end up with these taxes being high, and that is when you don't recognize revenues completely. And I found about $176,000 that I thought you could enhance revenues. You can't do that now, it's too late in the process. And the appropriated surplus. There's $1 million revenue surplus in 2014 on the town side. And all I said was, why don't we apply $200,000 of that to the appropriated surplus? And then the grand list would have accounted for another, it increased 0.25%. That would have basically covered the taxes in this town. And you could have had 1 year, I don't know if that's asking for too much, 1 year in which you didn't have a mill rate increase. All I'm asking, and all that I did ask, and I know it's probably late in the game now and you're not going to change it, and it's nice of you to let us come in and vent, but I'm pretty sure you're not going to change anything later this evening. But I want you and the people in this room to know that the taxes in this town are outstripping the ability of the average resident, the average taxpayer, and the average voter to survive. And that's why these budgets, for the last now 6 years, have failed on one or both have failed at least once each year. And the people that have voted against it are not bad people. They are just trying to survive. And I hope you will understand that when they voted down again next week, that they did it because they have no other choice. Thank you for your attention.
Do you have anyone else that wants to share
make a couple of comments. You know, every year we kind of go through the same game, so to speak, I feel. Every year, this is like a sort of vicious cycle. Every year, budget is put forward and it's defeated on the first round, thanks to, quite frankly, the efforts that the Taxpayers Association has made to get information out to people, and to keep people informed so they know what's going on. And every year, it gets defeated again, has been the last so many years, defeated on the first round. Because people are speaking out and saying they cannot afford these increases. And it just seems like what happens after that is that the board comes back, boards come back, and they chop off a little bit, just to hope that it'll go through the second time. The defeat this past time at the past vote was largely due to the fact that there were so many absentee ballots that came in. And I think that it gets to a point where we're kind of hoping that the absentee ballots they can't get into the second round, number one. And number two, after the second round, hopefully there won't be enough people in town. Hopefully the shore people won't be here, because there's a feeling that the shore people will vote the budget down. And it's just kind of like a vicious cycle. And I stand at the polls and I listen to the people when we have the voting. And I listen to people, and I was thinking about something today too, that this year when I went to pay my taxes at the beginning, in January or whatever, I had a discussion with the tax office about how many people, how slow the tax payments were this year, and how many people had so much difficulty paying their taxes this year. And I heard this over and over and over again. So it just seems to me it would be really, really great if just once, I don't like voting the budget down, I really don't. But then you hear about things like, or you see things happening, like people who are whistleblowers at the Board of Education, and how there's mismanagement in the Board of Education budget. It's not our children that are suffering, it's people that are suffering because of, I think, mismanagement. And just so you know, just so you think I'm not speaking off the top of my head, what I do for a living is I work for ophthalmologists nationwide, and I set up their practice management. And I have accountability, and I work on budgets, and I make sure that our costs are properly met. So my feeling is, from everything that I've observed, and I'm not on the Board of Finance, so I don't look at all these budgets, from everything that I've observed, I feel that there's an awful lot of mismanagement that's going on. And things could be done to make it better, without hurting the school system, without hurting the kids, without hurting the teachers. There's a lot of management that needs to be looked at more carefully. And I guess the only way it's ever going to be looked at more carefully or more critically is if the budgets keep being defeated, until we can get that budget down. How other towns do it, why do we have the highest mill rates? Why is it that 75% of all the taxes are being paid by the residents? Why is it that, what's going on in our town where things aren't being properly handled? The town budget was defeated only by 20 votes, I understand that. But if you recall, the school only passed by 40 votes. That was considered a mandate. And yet the 20 votes, but there were more than 20 votes, but when you said no against the town budget in a general way, except the difference in margin. However, the Board of Education budget went down by a very large margin. So I'm just tired of this having to cut these little tiny bits off and off and off over and over again. You ask any realtor, why houses aren't moving in Clinton? They're not moving in Clinton because of the taxes. People are bailing out of here. I know so many people who have bailed out of this town because they cannot afford to pay the taxes anymore. Something has to be done. And I absolutely beseech the board to please consider this in this next vote, because I don't want to keep coming back here and standing here, but we'll do it hopefully again and again and again, because we want a zero increase. Don't forget, and even there was an article published by the chairman of the Board of Finance. Don't forget, we've got school to pay for, we've got sanitation to pay for. It's all coming down the pipe faster than you can possibly imagine. And all of a sudden, your tax bill, you're going to just choke on it. I know people who the difference in a few dollars in their pocket every week means a lot to their families. They need that money. They really need that money. So just please, I please beg of you to do something this time, that for one time around, that we finally get to that zero increase. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Jo Phelps. I live on Delwood Avenue. I just wanted to say I thought the purpose of these meetings was to address the Board of Finance and to say where you felt further cuts should be made, or to say whether you support the budget as is. So, I support the budget as is.
Don't be shy, it's a small group. No? Everybody comfortable with moving? Then we'll move on to the Board of Education budget. Comments on the Board of Education budget.
Thank you, Andrea Root, Assembly of Board of Cycling, Clinton. I just wanted to thank the Board of Finance. I appreciate the role that you have to play, and I understand the cuts that you have made and recommended. I am requesting, with the utmost respect, that we don't cut any further, that every dollar that is spent on education in Clinton is a vote of confidence in and dedication of our youth and their promise and our responsibility as a society. Nobody likes to pay taxes. I don't like to pay taxes. They are a fact of life. We owe it to future generations, those who have taken care of us. And also that the budgets, they represent diligent effort on behalf of the Board of Education members and our administrators to really do what's fair and to present to us as a public that we've chosen them to represent us to do. And so we do have faith that they are doing the right thing. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I don't have really that much to say. I just made my notes really large so I can see them. I'd like to say something about context. Context, context, context. Because Clinton doesn't exist in a vacuum, and it doesn't exist in some other part of the country. It exists on the Connecticut shoreline. And throughout all of the different numbers that you can look at regarding towns along the Connecticut shoreline, Clinton is just so normal. We have a lot of yellow signs and a lot of yellow postcards telling us that Clinton is somehow extreme. But I feel like I've stepped through the looking glass with Alice in Wonderland into some kind of opposite world where everything is called the opposite of what it is. I mean, Clinton is accused of extremeness and high taxes, but the same house in Guilford or Old Saybrook, if you take your house here and you plunk it down there, your taxes will be higher. If you take your same house here and you plunk it down in Westbrook or Old Saybrook or Brantford or, I don't know if I'm missing a shoreline town, they're going to be similar. Clinton is accused of having extreme budget increases when up and down the shoreline every year. There are increases of 3 and 4% passed very easily on the first rounds. For the education operating budgets in Westbrook the last 4 years, averaged 4%. Operating budget increases in Old Saybrook, Brantford, and Guilford for the last 4 years, 3%. Only Madison is as low as we are at around 1%. Clinton is accused of being extreme and spending too much to educate the next generation, when every single town in the shoreline has a higher per pupil expenditure, except for Madison. They're the only ones that are doing it on such a shoestring as we are. Clinton is accused also of having some kind of sky-high property taxes. And I was seeing a number like 70 or 75% or something like that, that our taxes are supposed to have increased since the year 2000. So today I called the tax assessor's office to get the figure on my house from 2000, because you can go on Zillow.com, but it only goes back 10 years. And a friend of mine did it as well. My taxes have gone up 34% in those years, and my friend's taxes have gone up 29%. And if you were to speak to other people in shoreline towns and ask them to run their numbers on their property taxes from 2000 until 2014, they're going to come up with a very similar number. It's just, Clinton is so normal. So I'm begging the no voters to stop saying no in a vacuum and to consider the context of the real world and the real shoreline. And I know that it takes a lot longer to listen to context and to listen to the full story than it is to just say, hate your taxes, vote no. I understand that's very simple. But the whole story is what's fair. Considering the context of where you live, it's what's fair. I mean, it's incredibly impressive to me that we're standing toe-to-toe with Madison on per pupil expenditure, and that everyone else along the shoreline. Westbrook, I understand, is tiny, and I understand why they're 4,000 per pupil more than we are. I understand that, but I'm so impressed that we're standing toe-to-toe with Madison. The demographic is so different in Madison. You know, the biggest indicators of academic success are parent income level and parent education level. We're educating a very different demographic here. And it's amazing that we have the lowest per pupil spending in the shoreline right there with Madison. So I just want to tell one story about a man that I know that lives in this town who's very calm, he's very thoughtful, he considers all the angles, and he was speaking to somebody before the vote last weekend, and the man was saying to him, well, I'm thinking of voting no. And my friend said, well, tell me about that, why are you thinking of voting no? And he said, I don't want my taxes to go up. And my friend said to him, I'm poor too, tell me where I can move to that my taxes won't go up. And of course, the person didn't have an answer for him, because there is no place in the shoreline that you can move to where your taxes won't go up. But, you know, if you're looking for a place where the Board of Finance, the Board of Ed, the Board of Selectmen, everybody is doing just a very solid job of keeping just everything very normal. You're already here in that town with the things I said before, the low yearly increases, the low per pupil spending, and taxes that are absolutely 1,000% normal. We don't deserve these yellow signs and postcards any more than any other shoreline town does, but we have them. And I just think we should stop trying to punish our town and our schools for the solid, really normal job that they're doing.
Anyone else?
I'm sorry, I just got here. Can you tell me where we are in this meeting?
We're discussing the Board of Education, comments on the Board of Education budget.
Thank you very much.
We've got a total of like 5 speakers so far on both.
I forgot that's your name. Okay, sure. So I'm fine now? Okay. Okay. Once again, Mary Jo Phelps, Delwood Avenue. I would like to encourage you to make no further cuts to the Board of Ed budget. We have a 20% poverty rate here in Clinton, a child poverty rate, and that's a huge problem for our schools to deal with. And everybody works very hard under those circumstances to educate every child in Clinton. Westbrook had a budget deficit this year because they counted windows wrong. And they ended up with over $100 million budget deficit. So I just want to say our administrators don't count windows wrong. They get the numbers right. So I hope you won't make any further cuts.
Hi there.
My name is Beverly Bowen. I work for the public schools. This is my 25th year in Clinton. I live at 35 Silver Birch Lane. I've been a resident in Clinton for many years. I raised all 4 of my children in this school system. All 4 graduated from our schools. And I'm a speech pathologist in public schools. And I've seen, just as was mentioned, the needs in our town increase progressively, particularly over the past 10 years. And the needs in our teachers' classrooms and what they need to deal with on a daily basis is, it's very serious. Students who come in without food, without being fed. And it's not a majority, but it is more than just a few. And with that come educational, emotional, and social needs. And those all come to us. So, as teachers and special educators and specialists, our job is important, and we can't do it without funding. So my request would be no further cuts be made. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Carol?
Melanie Elliott, 7 Indian Drive, parent of 2 children who've gone through the school system. I don't have numbers and statistics like everybody else, but I have a lot of friends who are teachers, and I know how much money they spend out of their own pocket to get through the school year, to make ends meet. I also am very active in the community, and I see the work that's being done by other people that are trying to help out, such as Partners in Community, which I hope lots of you know, there is a small line item in there to keep that running. They are the group that makes sure that the kids are educated on how not to get in trouble with substance abuse and have alternative methods of having fun versus, school calling for your counselors if children are killed with bad decisions. So not only is that happening in the school systems and in the community, as others have said, it's the big picture. It's not just the town and the school. It's us all working together to make sure all of our residents, not just the kids, but all of us, are not going to funerals because of destructive decisions, and that we're all healthy and happy in this community. And our teachers go above and beyond on a shoestring budget. My kids witnessed it. I see it still. My friends, I'm begging you not to make any more cuts. I understand that people's taxes are going to go up, but like others have said, where else are you going to live if your taxes are not going to go up? And thank you for your hard work on the budget.
All right, going once?
Try not to speak on myself. I think we'll stipulate the fact that all of us love our children. We all want what's best for them. We actually want what's best for other people's children, too. I've raised 2 sons. I have 2.5 grandchildren. So, I can empathize with all of you. My wife had a career as a public school teacher. My mother taught in public schools. I was educated in public schools. So when I come before you, I'm not against public schools or public education. It's the bulwark of democracy. I believe in it. The problem we have in Clinton is that the Board of Education and Board of Finance have not held the superintendent to account on a number of items, and I've gone through it. I've sent Mr. Williams lots of information about where these budgets have gone astray. And instead of coming back and saying, no, Kirk, you're wrong, this number's wrong, that number's wrong, he simply says, these numbers are all twisted. They're just twisting the numbers. But he can't show me how I've twisted the numbers. Or if he can, he hasn't. What has happened, and I got the ledgers from the last 5 years, and it's very clear that the budgets have gone farther and farther astray. The red line represents deficit lines. That's where they spent more than was budgeted. And the green represents surplus lines. So in 2010, they had $335,000 of deficits in 10 lines, and they had $414,000 in surpluses in 10 lines. The next year, that jumped to 716 and 617, and the surplus line jumped to 1.4 million in 2011. And that's when they had the $827,000 surplus. Now, Mr. Cross will tell you, well, they had a windfall that year. That they had a lot of teachers who retired when they didn't expect to retire. That's what he'll tell you. But if you dig into the numbers, you'll find that's a very small explanation. The big explanation comes from fringe benefits. And this is where, and I think that Mr. Cross should get some credit for having gotten the fringe benefit costs down. But he ought to be, criticized for having not brought the budget down with those costs. And so we had $492,000 surplus. And this is just one line. A $930,000 surplus, a $716,000 surplus, a $664,000 surplus. And I said, well, and you can see it's kind of increased from this going down. So I didn't put it on this chart, but I did on another one. And if you took the increases, you'd have a $543,000 surplus again in next year's budget in this one line. So he's taken, how much did you take out? $210,000, I believe, in this line. I mean, there's a lot more that could have been taken out. I mean, he cut out $330,000 without breaking a sweat. And there's a lot more that could have been taken out of this, but because you didn't demand it, he didn't do it. But he could have easily done it. I've also come in possession of the current ledger to date. And it currently, even including encumbrances for certified salaries and non-certified salaries, to the tune of about $4 million they will spend between now and the end of the year, there's a $709,000 surplus at this point. I think Mr. Cross has said he expects to have a $330,000 surplus by the end of the year, but he will not be held to it. Now, at this point in the year, in most school districts where the budgets are tight, the conversation itself is, how are we going to hold the spending down so we don't go over at the end of the year? How do we not have that $100,000 deficit? But in Clinton, the conversation that is held is, how are we going to spend this down? That's the conversation. And it's in their minutes. It's not anything that they do behind closed doors. They do it openly. They do it proudly. And they say that we want them to spend it down. We don't want them to spend it down. We want them to trim it down. Because when they don't trim it down, that $600,000 or $800,000 in surpluses ends up in taxes from those poor people who you say you're having to feed in the school, from those people in poverty who are hurt the most by these property taxes, as I showed you in the previous boards. I want the school system to be successful. I just don't want it to gouge taxpayers, poor taxpayers, who can't afford to pay the piper. And I want you to be responsible. I left you with 4 thoughts the other evening. The first one was, I went to the Board of Education. Mr. Cross was, I guess, at the Board of Finance meeting. First of all, it's unforgivable to ever fire a whistleblower. The schools should be encouraging people to come forward with ideas to save money, and where possible, where there's wasteful spending, to bring it forward to surface. The Board of Education should not allow the superintendent to hire consultants without them authorizing those consultants. And the encumbrances over the last 5 years have averaged $300,000 a year for a total of $1.6 million, which I issued a FOI, Freedom of Information Act request for an accounting of how the encumbered funds were spent. $1.6 million. And I've been told by the superintendent of schools, he says, that's not what he said. And I said, well, what did you say? And I'm not sure. But either he can't, he won't, but I haven't received any accounting for $1.6 million in encumbered funds. And the last thing that I said to the Board of Education tonight is, please, take the term spend down out of your vocabulary. You're spending down other people's money, and it's immoral. And I hope you'll take that to heart. I know that the people on the Board of Education are good people. I don't think they mean, and I think Jack Ross is a good person. I think Jack Ross does what he thinks superintendents do. And I think the Board of Education supports him. And as a result, they don't ask him the tough questions that he needs to be asked. And I hold them as accountable on this as I do him. I think you can do a better job. I hope you will do a better job. I hope you look at the things I've sent you that are heartfelt. Do you know how much time I've spent doing that work? And for you to just throw it aside because I'm some gadfly is just, I don't know, I'm so frustrated I don't know what to do with that. But anyway, I want to thank you very much for your service, and I think you can do better too. Thank you.
No, I do not. Kim Buckley, 88 Carriedale Road, Clinton. The Board of Finance and a member of the Board of Education, I know how much time you spend at meetings and listening to people. Attached, I just gave the Board of Finance a whole bunch of data that I don't expect them to read tonight, but it's data regarding the level of poverty in the Clinton Public Schools, along with several scholarly articles about the correlation between poverty and achievement and the power of education to break the cycle of poverty. As you can see from the enclosed materials from the Connecticut Coalition for Achievement Now, which is called CONCAN, Clinton is unique on the shoreline in having 20% of its students falling into the low-income category. Of the towns that surround us, only Old Saybrook comes close to that level at 18%. The next closest is Westbrook at 13%, HK's poverty level is 8%, Guilford is 7%, and Madison's is 5%. And looking at the CONCAN data, you'll see a direct correlation between poverty level and school performance. The schools that have lower levels of poverty have higher school performance, while the schools that have higher level of poverty have lower school performance. I share these figures because they reveal one of the unique challenges facing our community when compared to the rest of the shoreline, which is poverty. I also share these figures because this same argument that people in our community are struggling, a fact I certainly don't dispute, is used as a reason to cut and vote down the education budget. This reasoning is fallacious. As you can see from the enclosed scholarly research, education is the path out of poverty. One report from the International Academy of Education states that education brings social benefits, including higher incomes. The report also references the fact that education improves job prospects for 4 groups. In other words, if we as a community really want to work toward reducing poverty here in Clinton and make our community stronger, we need to invest in education. Another argument made against the education budget at a recent Board of Education meeting is that only 1/3 of our community benefits from the school budget. This statement is completely absurd. To quote author John Green, public education does not exist for the benefit of students or for the benefit of their parents. It exists for the benefit of the social order. The benefits to society as a whole from educational investment are supported by study after study. According to a report from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, education has the potential to bring significant benefits to individuals and society which go well beyond its contribution to individuals' employability or income. Policymakers should take into account the wider social benefits of education when allocating resources across public policies. The report specifically cites reductions in violence, longer life expectancies, and increased civic engagement, which I think looking around you could use. as just a few of the ways in which public education makes the world a better place for everyone who's in it. As a taxpayer who loves Clinton and wants to see our town thrive, I respectfully ask that you make no further cuts to the education budget. Let's invest in education to make Clinton a better place for all of us, both today and tomorrow, and please know that the Board of Education asks Mr. Cross lots of hard questions. Thank you.
There's about 35 people here. Is anyone else going to speak on the education budget tonight, please?
My name is Phil Williams, 13 Elsie Lane. I'm also the chair of the Board of Ed. I thank you for the amount of time and effort that you've put into reviewing the budgets, both the town and the Board of Ed's budget. And I implore you not to make any further cuts in the Board of Ed budget. We have spent a tremendous amount of time working through these numbers with the administrators from each of the buildings, going through all of the work that they do in great detail to educate the children in our town, and the services that they provide after school hours at very minimal cost to this town. To take any more away from our children would be a disservice to the entire town, and I thank you for everything that you've done. There's been a couple of comments made tonight by CTA members that are patently false. The information that has been requested in a FOIA request by one of those members has been provided. Nothing has ever been withheld, and it is being said over again in public comment and recorded, and that's why I'm standing here addressing that issue while it doesn't pertain to the budget. So I ask for your forgiveness for saying something, but I have to speak out against this because it is not true what was just said about the FOIA not being dealt with in the letter of the law. Thank you.
Jeff Cash, I live at 66 River Road, Clinton. I wanted to stand here and tell a small little story about what we're going through. It is our family. My daughter next year will be starting up in Middletown High School. Middletown has built a brand spanking new school a couple of years ago. And they offer a vocational educational part of that school that's up there. They have greenhouses, they have all kinds of farm implementing things. Where Heather's going to be getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to a school that actually has 4 or 5 times more students and some other programs that are involved. When they designed that whole school, they designed so that centrally in the middle of Middletown, they could draw many students that come from a lot of different towns. In that, researching and going up through that school system, Heather would probably be one of the first students to enjoy our brand new school. We opted to take her out of our public school and to send her into another school that offers the agricultural impact in her life so that she could go on to possibly UConn. Not all kids that go to UConn are basketball players. They have a wonderful agricultural program. They have a wonderful, wonderful outreach for kids. Farming in a community, which used to be a real foundation in our community. She has a wonderful interest when she comes home. There are days I have to kind of pretend like I know what she's talking about. It's wonderful to have her describe what she sees in a microscope. It's wonderful to have her talk about something about the nucleus of the stem wall of the, I know how to weld. You know, it's wonderful. I'm speaking for the educational part of our kids in our school. I never would have thought that as I drive up on 81, I would see something as wonderful as this school being built. It was a really hard thing for me to fathom. Some of us kind of got stuck on an old house, and, you know, I kind of picture that old house being there now, and wow, it really would have been a real eyesore out there. I have to admit, as the school's being developed, I think a lot of us are starting to come to an idea of what that school is going to do for our kids. I do realize there's operating expenses and there's budgets and there's all kinds of things that are way past my realm of comprehension, but there are the things that Heather will be able to enjoy, not only this part of our school, but in Middletown, which I think is really great. It would be nice to see some of those other programs, maybe not so much in sports, maybe an outreach into different types of trades or different things that are there, because those are the things that people today, sorry I'm dirty, I've been working all day on the farm, but you come to realize that there's a whole umbrella called education that covers each one of us today in our kids. That comes at a cost. My wife works at the school system. She deals with some of the special needs kids, and not every child has the capacity to have learning come so easy. Today, when I look back to go to our school system and think, what did we have? Some sports, some basics in school. The demands for our community seem to be a lot higher tech than what they are from when I went to school to this here. So today I look at the educational world for our kids and think how important that really is. And some of those things, as simple as balancing a checkbook, taking care of business, trying to teach my daughter what might next be coming in the community, what is a big demand. I realize this all costs money. It does. It's what we're obligated to pay in our taxes. I see Todd Horry here, he represents the police department. We need police enforcement also too, and we need our town to run. Some of the issues that I look at when we come up to a tax increase, I look at people who are elderly, fighting for oil in their tank, trying to stay warm, medications increases, all those programs that seem to be cut by different cuts here and there. And to be sensitive to those people, and each one of those people in our community is very important. A few percent here and there, I can understand some of it. I really can, but to be responsible with that money, whether it be in our planning and zoning department, whether it be in any division, anything that takes and requires tax dollars, we have to be responsible for it. And that's all I have to say tonight. I really wanted to be able to encourage all of, and thank the Board of Finance. You have a tough job. Everybody has a tough job. The Board of Education has a tough job trying to go forward into this new school. I can only possibly imagine, you know, what possible things are going in there. And there's good people in this room. There's good people in our town. And we need to go forward. We need to be able to take percentages forward in our town and to be healthy in our town. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
My name is Dave Capice. I live at 28 Grove Street in Clinton. I went to the Board of Ed meeting the other night, and my concern is that if the Board of Finance didn't ask for a 1% cut to the Board of Ed budget, $330,000 would still be there. And it seemed like the $330,000 that they cut was kind of a known number that was built in there. Like, you know, teachers are retiring, so that was part of the figure. And you make a call to Cigna and you find out your rates are lower or something and you lose 110 there. It's like, if the town didn't ask you to cut 1%, there'd still be, if we voted yes, $330,000 in that budget. And that would be excess, right? Extra. And I didn't see any cuts, like I heard there was snow issues, I heard there was raises that could have been, there's more cuts that could have been made, and I was just wondering if the Board of Finance had asked the school to cut 2%, then maybe you would have seen a real cut. Not just the 330 that was real easy to do according to what I saw, but then also further into it, that might save more money. So my curious question is, again, if you didn't take out the 330, the Board of Ed would have $330,000 more money in there that obviously they wouldn't spend because they weren't going to spend it. That's how they could cut it. And then there's got to be other cuts in there. There has to be maybe changes in subcontractors, different ways to operate maintenance. There's got to be other ways to make cuts. I love the kids. I love the education. I don't want to see anybody become stupid and go out the streets and become bums. I'm glad we have a new school. I didn't vote for it, but I'm glad we have a new school. I'm sure it's going to work out. But I don't want anyone to think here that I just hate the Board of Ed, because I don't. I respect Kim. I respect Jack. I respect the teachers. I do love the students. But I just also feel personally that you don't have to add so much money into a budget, and then I keep hearing about excesses every year. I was told when I had a business, you had to budget pretty well right on the money. That's the way you do it. You don't just get to say, an extra couple $1 million here and there, and then we'll have some leftovers. I worked there for a number of years. I never got a 5% raise. And with all the kind of distractions that have been going on, I hear there's people getting 5% raises in that budget. Seems like there could be cuts. Principals make a lot of money, and we all have to take it on the chin. 1%, 2%, sometimes 3% if you're lucky, but most of the time, most of us only get 1%, 1.5, 2. But gas goes up, food goes up, insurance goes up. There's all kinds of cuts. And we're going to be looking at a tax structure that's going to be going higher and higher with the new school, and then there's a water pollution control thing. My mom is on a fixed income now. She's 77 years old. She spent her whole life in this town. I guarantee that in 10, 15 years, she might not be able to afford to live in this town. And the same is true for me. With the measly amount of money that I make, just as a blue-collar worker, and having to have 2 people work in my family to make ends meet, every time my taxes go up another $100 or $200 a month just to pay the mortgage, and there'll be a time if I look down the road 15, 20 years, depending on what Social Security is and whatever savings I have, that I might not be able to afford to live in the house that I spent 50 years in because of the taxes. So when I'm saying I don't want the Board of Ed to raise their budget and get more money, it's not because I hate education. It's because I want to keep our taxes down for as long as we can, so I can live in this town for as long as I can. Thank you.
Anyone else? Otherwise, we'll close the meeting. No?
Move to close.
Someone's walking in.
Oh.
I'll be very.
I don't want to stay here longer tonight.
Erica Gelvin, 2 Alton Drive. Very quickly, I just want to ask that you move forward with the cuts as they've been proposed. But it was just occurring to me that this whole notion of cut has me a little bit troubled because cut sounds so angry and violent. I feel like I'm gravitating toward reductions. I feel better about that word than cuts. Because I think we kind of get into this dialogue about, about people being hurt by the decisions that are being made. And I think that the Board of Ed, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, you're being very thoughtful and considerate about making sure that the monies that we're proposing spending are going to meet our needs in this town, but still be respectful and responsible to the people who are on fixed income, who can't afford to have their taxes go up. And I really am kind of in this moment wanting to move toward the word reduction instead of cut.
That being said, I think that the cuts that have been proposed are thoughtful. They're meaningful. They do suggest a way of kind of, changing the mindset going forward as to how budgets are formed and thought through. So I would just respectfully request that you consider the work of the town and the Board of Education with what they suggested as a solution. Thank you.
There's a motion on the floor to close this video. For a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you all for coming.
Madam Chairman.
Calling the meeting, this is a special meeting, on the 20th of May, 15 Board of Finance, with regards to the public hearing. Need to see anyone? Yes.
Yes.
Motion to see board?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Have no alternate?
No time, it's just us.
5 people.
What's the first item on the agenda?
First item on the agenda is to discuss, you know.
I do know.
I'm not a night person, believe me. You should never
You're doing great.
Discuss, as a result of this public hearing, whether any changes are suggested by this eminent, intelligent, and forthright board to these budgets.
I make a motion that no further change be made to either budget.
I'll second. Do we have a discussion?
Except for one person, I think everybody knows where they can look at something else. I think we're civic engagement.
And you would put more for
I expect more.
I appreciate the people that chose.
You can say that it's
I did run for office. Twice.
It's funny. Did you read the papers tomorrow? North Haven had 1,500 people, tops, vote for their budget. North Haven is 3 times the size of Clinton. Only 1,500 people came up.
That's right.
Clinton had 2888, which is like 1/3. It wasn't bad.
Let's not compare to the worst thing.
I'm just saying.
You're right, Kenny. I mean, the numbers are going up.
The numbers are going up. The people came out and voted. A lot of people don't like to come here and sit. They'll let us know next Wednesday night.
Exactly. Speak it.
One way or the other.
So we have a motion and a second to not make changes. Any further discussion? Discuss. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
No, I gotta read.
To read.
Yes.
Feel better if you actually.
Yeah.
Having said that,
Absolutely.
I will now read the legal notice that will be presented to the electors of the town of Clinton. The electors of the town of Clinton, Connecticut, and all other citizens entitled to vote in the town meetings of the said town of Clinton are hereby notified and warned that a budget referendum will be held at the Angels Memorial Town Hall, Green Room, 54 East Main Street, Clinton, Connecticut, on Wednesday, May 27, 2015, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m., with the voting to be done by paper ballot. By paper ballot? Oh. The following questions will be placed on the ballot. Question number 1. In favor of the proposed town government budget of the town of Clinton for the fiscal year July 1, 2015 to June 30, 2016, in the amount of $16,582,487. Question number 2. In favor of the proposed Board of Education budget of the Town of Clinton for the fiscal year July 1, 2015 to June 30th, 2016, in the amount of $32,710,331. Dated at Clinton, Connecticut, 20th day of May, 2015. William W. Fritz Jr., First Selectman.
We voted to accept this, second it. We've all voted unanimously in favor of it. Mary has.
I'll make the motion that we accept the legal notice as read and that gets sent to referendum.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Motion adjourned.
Thank you all for your time.